So often we forget Canada's history of slavery, but the truth is, it happened in this country. Now, members of Parliament have officially designated August 1st as Emancipation Day.
Well, today is an important day in this country for other reasons as well, and for countries around the world formerly part of the British Empire. August 1st, Emancipation Day.
Hello everyone, I'm really glad to be here. I would like to thank Evangeline Chima and the BMI Project for inviting me to be part of this wonderful event. I would like to sing for you Amazing Grace. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How precious did that grace appear the hour I first believed. Through many dangers, toils, and snares, I have already come. 'Twas grace that brought me safe thus far, and grace will lead me home. When we've been there 10,000 years, bright shining as saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I am found. Was blind, but now I see. Oh yes, I see. Hallelujah. Amen.
Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Evangeline Chima and I am the founder and executive director of Black Mentorship Inc. It is my ultimate great pleasure to be here with you as we celebrate Emancipation Day, a day to recognize the generational impact of slavery on the Black community, and to celebrate the culture and achievements of those impacted by the long-lasting impacts of social and cultural inequalities. Today's virtual event delivers a powerful message of hope and strength. It is an opportunity for all of us to connect, to learn, and to build community together. Today, we will be hearing from 3 phenomenal Black Canadian speakers as they share their stories of struggles and triumphs. We are so grateful to the Government of Canada for their support in helping Black Mentorship Inc. bring forward this amazing and important event. At this time, I encourage you all to sing along from your homes or wherever you are as we welcome back Annie Ugobo to sing our national anthem, O Canada.
Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north strong and free. From far and wide, oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. Oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh Canada, we stand on guard for
Thank you so much, Annie. That was really, really wonderful. At this time, we're going to honor the land and territory that we are in BMI's board director, Habiba Abohim, will help us to honor the land that we are in. Habiba.
Hello everyone, thanks for joining us. Let us acknowledge the indigenous people of all the lands we are on today. While we meet once again on a virtual platform, we would like to take a moment to acknowledge the importance of the lands we each call home. We do this to reaffirm our commitment and responsibility in improving relationship between nations and to improving our own understanding of local indigenous peoples and their cultures. Your Black Mentorship Inc. is situated upon the traditional territories of the Erie, Neutral, Huron-Wendat, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, and the Haudenosaunee Six Nations. Halton, as we know it today, is rich in the history and modern traditions of many First Nations and the Métis. From the lands of the Anishinaabe to the Attawandaron, the Haudenosaunee, and the Métis, these lands surrounding the Great Lakes are steeped in indigenous history. As we gather today on these treaty lands, we are in solidarity with our indigenous brothers and sisters to honor and respect the four directions: lands, waters, plants, animals, and ancestors that walk before us, and all of the wonderful elements of creation that exist. Land acknowledgement, it's only one small part of supporting indigenous communities. We hope our land acknowledgement statement will inspire others to stand with us in solidarity as we reflect and try to move forward in spirit of reconciliation and collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you, Habiba. Joining us today is the Honorable National Minister of Defense, Anita Arnard, who will deliver a reflective message of hope for the future.
Thank you, Evangeline, and the entire team at Black Mentorship Inc. for the opportunity to join you as we mark Emancipation Day across the country. En tant que Canadiens, il est important que nous reconnaissons l'histoire de l'esclavage et l'impact de la colonisation sur les Canadiens noirs. Emancipation Day marks the day in 1834 when the Slavery Abolition Act took effect, leading to the freedom of enslaved people in British North America, now known as Canada. I invite all Canadians to commemorate Emancipation Day by reflecting, learning more about the legacy of slavery, and recognizing the resilience of Black Canadians in overcoming adversity. Nous devons continuer à travailler sans relâche pour éliminer le racisme et l'intolérance dans notre pays et dans le monde entier. As the Member of Parliament for Oakville and the Minister of National Defense, I am fully committed to combating anti-Black racism and hate in all its forms. On July 9th, the Prime Minister and I visited Truro, Nova Scotia, to apologize to the members and descendants of the No. 2 Construction Battalion, an all-Black battalion that faced discrimination and racism during its service to Canada in World War I. We also reaffirmed our commitment to building a more inclusive Canadian Armed Forces where all are welcomed and respected. On Emancipation Day and every day, we renew our commitment to the fight against racism as we continue to build a more inclusive and equitable Canada. I wish you all a meaningful Emancipation Day. Thank you. Merci beaucoup. Miigwech.
Thank you so much, Minister Arnard, for your message and your commitment to combating anti-Black racism and hate in all forms. When Canadians talk about slavery, we often point with pride to our country's role in the mid-1800s as a safe haven for Black Americans escaping captivity via the Underground Railroad. This is only half the truth. This uncompleted history seems to suggest that enslaved people in Canada were well treated. This cannot be far from the truth. The fact is, the very nature of slavery meant that its victims were stripped of their fundamental human rights and exploited. So, let's say it the way it is. Slavery existed in Canada, period. We don't want people telling us that slavery is mined in Canada or comparing the atrocities committed against blacks all over the Western world, because the truth is the denial of one's fundamental human rights can never be described as mined. The denial of one human right from any individual is one too many, and we cannot condone, minimize, diminish, or excuse the exploitation of any human being, not then and certainly not now. In 1790, the Upper Canada government passed an imperial statute to encourage the immigration of white Americans northward. The statute allowed them to bring black enslaved people duty-free. They were referenced alongside household furniture, utensils of husbandry, or clothing. Stay with us and you will hear from 3 brave Black Canadians representing 3 generations of freedom fighters who will share their stories of resilience and how their experiences of rejection in Canada and racism, especially in the Canadian workforce, have impacted them. We are sharing these stories to ensure we continue to tell the complete story of slavery in Canada and to shed light on the generational impacts of slavery that continue to this day. As we strive for equitable opportunities for all Canadians, it is our collective responsibility to ensure we never forget. You may wonder, why must we tell the complete story of slavery in Canada? When Black people don't see themselves represented in top management positions in schools, businesses, and professional settings, they feel this Canada, which is supposed to be home, is not theirs. Rosemary Brown said, and I quote, "We must open the doors and see to it they remain open so that others can pass through." It is now time for me to introduce our speakers to you. I want you to meet Ozaku Ike, a Nigerian-trained legal practitioner and a registered social service worker in Canada. Uzo is representing Black Canadians in their 50s. Next, you are going to meet Nick Nance, Senior Community Events and Execution Manager, Corporate Citizenship, TD Bank. Nick is representing the Black Canadians in their 40s. And finally, meet Fasua Abohim, award-winning slam poet and author. I am so proud of this young woman, representing our youths and our hope for the future. Fasua is in her early 20s. While these 3 individuals have generations between them, they share many things in common. No, I'm not talking about their skin color. I'm talking about their story of rejection upon rejection. Black Canadians still face obstacles to advancement than any other minorities in Canada. They are less likely than their peers to be hired, mentored, and promoted. Without any further ado, please hear our speakers.
Okay, so I've been asked to talk about gender inequalities, being an immigrant Black woman, and the impact of racism in my career progression. There's no doubt, saying that race and gender inequalities, continues to matter in very subtle, complicated, and intersecting ways for Black women and indeed for all people of color. So today, basically, I will be talking briefly on my own personal experience on how gender inequalities have impacted not just my career progression, but my overall living and, here in Canada. So prior to leaving Nigeria in 2010 and moving to Europe with my family, where we were to settle in as expatriates, before then, I have always known myself as by my first name and, of course, my professional titles. So I've always been known as Barrister Mrs. Ozaku Ike. And yes, this is because I read law in my first degree, and I got qualified as a legal practitioner and barrister and solicitor of the Supreme Court of Nigeria. And since after then, I've had the privilege of traveling to over 12 countries, and I have lived and worked in 3 continents, including Africa, Europe, and North America. It was actually while I was in Europe that it suddenly dawned on me that I am Black, because that was when I was first addressed as a Black woman of color. So the fact that I was Black and a person of color was a big drawback to my career progression. But of course, the lioness in me never said never. I had to push myself to go the extra mile to always prove myself as being relevant and capable. One of the first things I did while I was in Europe was to enroll for a master's program. So I completed my master's in international public administration from the Leiden University in the Netherlands, right? After which I continued to forge ahead, and as God will have it, I was able to secure a job in an international organization where English was their first language. Well, though I was working in an international organization, then the underrepresentation of Blacks and especially even women were so evident. So from the onset, I saw myself, having to deal with racism and sexism, because these two were staring to my face, as a woman of color. So I actually faced quite a lot of stifled leadership and subtle but persistent doubt about my competence, my intelligence, my skills that are not even related to the job I was called to do. I had to constantly go the extra mile to prove my competence and my relevance. And I remember one day one of my colleagues said to me, how did you even get to this position? You seem so ambitious. You better slow down, because the likes of you may never go far in this kind of environment. And I just looked at him, and I felt I don't even know what to say. So, indeed, one of the things I would say that I lacked then was professional network and mentorship, and connection with people of similar background with me. The truth is that they were really not available for obvious reasons. Like the guy said, they never go far in this kind of environment. Oh, well, that was my brief experience for Europe. So now let's talk about Canada. I have only been in Canada for about 5 years. And within this period, I can actually count the number of racist and gender inequalities I've experienced, or I've encountered, as an immigrant in Canada, as a woman in Canada. These racist and discriminatory experiences we have felt in different ways at different places in different sectors. Though some of them might seem very subtle, but they were clearly evident in the system. Okay, so my very first experience was during I think that was actually before we arrived Canada, and we had to search for a house to rent as newcomers to Canada. We got several slaps on our face for the mere fact that we are newcomers to Canada, and to worsen it for the mere fact that we are black immigrants, and not just that, this is a black immigrant woman and her children wanting to rent their space. Yes, and because my husband wasn't even going to be coming with us, so we put it up front. There is myself and my children. Even with money we had at hand, we are turned down, and the only person that was willing to accommodate us, rather to give us his space to rent, insisted that we have to make 1 year rent. Yes, we had to pay the down payment of 1 year rent, and we're talking about $36,000 we put down. Okay, so my second experience of racism in Canada was actually at the customs office, where I went to clear my goods upon arriving in Canada. I recall, getting to the customs office with all my documents as required, and this young man was attending to me, but all of a sudden, this other, guy comes behind him. I don't know what he said to him, so the young man got up and left. So he took over the clearing of my documents, and then he's just looking at my documents and looking at me with this kind of mean look, no, not even a hello or anything. And then he said to me, "Why are you in Canada, and what are you coming to do in Canada?" I felt like, where is this question coming from? Other guy has already made notes on my file, right, on the things I said to him. But anyway, I answered him, and he said to me, "Well, some of the likes of you, come here and they never want to go back. I think you have brought more goods than is required, so it looks like you're not making plans to go back after your studies. Well, based on that, you're going to pay $3,000 to clear these goods." Man, I was dumbfounded. I had my mouth open, my eyes staring at him. I couldn't even figure out what to say. And the only thing I could ask was like, why? Why do I have to? He said, well, that he has the right as a customs officer to reverse whatever that he said based on his assessment. Therefore, based on his assessment, he doesn't think I'll be leaving Canada after my studies. Therefore, I'm going to pay $3,000. If I don't want to pay that, then they have to make sure my goods are sent back to where it's coming from. And I'm looking at this guy and I'm like, for that, how are you going to do that? Tears started dropping off my eyes, and the next thing he said to me, well, how much are you willing to pay? I said, I don't think I have anything to pay. And the guy was like, okay, then we have to, well, I didn't want him to go that far. The next night I said, okay, maybe I can pay $8,000. Then the guy canceled the $3,000 he wrote on the book and wrote $1,000, and then just dropped my papers and said, go there and pay. Anytime you're ready to leave Canada for good, you can come back and make your claims back. The guy got up and just left. So it was very obvious that he just came to, dismiss me, just mere fact that he saw this black lady standing. He couldn't understand why. So, I felt so demoralized. I felt so discouraged. But again, the lioness in me said to me, this is just the beginning. I don't know what more I'm going to expect, but it kind of, strengthened me and made me prepared to face other issues that might come in my way. Well, so again, my third experience was while I was taking a diploma program in one of the colleges here in Canada. The class was a mix of international and local students. I noticed that most local students didn't want to pair with blacks or most Indians, who happened to be mostly the international students. So they never wanted to have them in their group works. The few that finally connected with me did so because they now came to realize that, there is more for them to benefit from having me in their group assignments because, I came with a lot of experience and all that. So it just appears that if there is nothing in it for them, they never want to get connected with you. And also, in one of the courses that I took, which has to do with immigration, I recall challenging one of our professors for using only Nigerians as examples of illegal immigrants to Canada. So this is another form of stereotyping and labeling. Again, it was just everywhere in every space that I go. I kept noticing that. Well, again, I had another experience. This could be my fourth experience in the line of things, right? So this was after I graduated and I was now job searching. I knew what I wanted. I was gunning for the big corporations or government jobs. I tried to cast my net across the little sea of network that I had with the hope that someone somewhere could give me direction on how to, go about it. So, and I recall a friend introducing me to this guy who he said was working in one of the school boards and he could give me guidance on how to progress. But to my own very disappointment, my first phone conversation with this guy, who was supposed to be a helper or a mentor, after I had shared my background story with him, he said to me, "Look, you're still new to Canada. Moreover, you're black and a woman. It's not going to be easy for you to progress. Just slow down. Look for something small and start with, because it's going to take a couple of years for you to get into the system." And to be honest, I just didn't want him to continue that discussion. I had to quickly find a way, to just end that conversation because I didn't want anything to dampen my spirit. All these experiences were just enough to discourage or demoralize me, But however, for the determination I have, came to me. All these experiences came to me as a challenge, and 3 months after that conversation I had with this guy, I got the job that I'm doing now, a government job. Yes. So anyway, currently I work with a government organization. I've been with this company for the past 2.5 years. So far, I would say I've not really had any personal one-on-one issues. I guess maybe because I came into my current job with a mindset that, I'm ready to fight and withstand any form of racism and sexism. Again, I might just also say thanks to Black Lives Matters movement, which came into being the last 2 years or thereabout. And of course, after that, most companies are now putting measures into place that focuses on achieving more race and gender diversity in the workplace. It is not completely done. There are still some subtle and unspoken elements of it. So we just keep fighting and keep struggling, put our eyes open and see where it takes us to. So finally, I would say that ultimately, race and gender inequalities continues to matter in complicated, intersecting ways for Black women and indeed for all people of color in the Western world. In how many decades I've been through it, it still hangs there. Let's see what the future holds for us. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Nick Nurse. I will be answering the following question today. How being Black in Canada has impacted my career trajectory despite my qualifications compared to those of my peers. This is a really interesting question to answer, and I think one that many Black people contend with throughout the life of their career. Even those who I've spoken to who are uber successful and are VPs and AVPs in companies and directors, they still face a challenge. And I can definitely say that I faced many of my own challenges in trying to not only be recognized, but gain fair compensation and be developed in companies as well. I don't know that there's an agenda. I think institutional racism exists and perceptions about Black people exist that are not positive, are extremely negative based off of historical events that happened, including slavery and suppressing Black people to keep a system alive and put money in people's pockets. And, it really started off as something that was economic and steeped deeply in unethical behavior. But I think the consequences of those decisions made have impacted the perception of Black people today. And career is no exception to that. In our careers, we are perceived in certain ways based on what we bring to the table, but we're also perceived in ways from the individual And those can be biased, unfortunately. And so the way that in thinking of how to answer this question, I've considered or reflected on my own past and what I thought prior to working in large corporations. What did I think, and how did that compare to the reality of working in a large corporation, but through the lens of institutional racism? Because I think there's another way to think of this as well, but I want to speak to the institutional racism aspect first. So entering into a large corporation, when I was younger, I always perceived entering into a company that if I worked hard and I did my very best, that I would reap the rewards of that hard work. And that was instilled in me by my parents, very proud immigrant parents from the Caribbean. And I still believe that to be true. However, coming into the world of work, that what seemed like a very straightforward law of life was kind of turned on its head, and it wasn't always the reality. I saw people who were being promoted quite easily, not even putting their hand up sometimes, but just being tapped on the shoulder based on who they knew. And I thought to myself, well, that's interesting. And I didn't even choose to see color. I just thought, well, good people, what I think are maybe good people for roles are being developed for them. And I thought, okay, well, if I work hard too, and I'll be developed at some point. When that didn't happen, I thought, well, I've got to do something. And I worked very hard for development. I always put my hand up. I always, was one step ahead to make sure that I was even acknowledged to begin with at work, and had to become more vocal to be heard. And sometimes that still didn't grant me the promotion or the development that I was so yearning for. And then, a great example is in HR. I worked at a company where 90% of the managers in HR, I would even say more, were white women. And they were promoting people who looked like them. So you saw high-level management and mid-level management looking very, very monotone. It looked the same. And I thought to myself, it's great that white women are being promoted. I think this is a wonderful thing, because that segment of diversity needs attention as well, just as we all do. But when it started to perpetuate itself and it started to become a noticeable, obvious trend that everyone was talking about, I thought something's amiss here, something's up. And I don't think it's intentional. I think it comes from the perception of who the people hiring think has the ability to complete the work. And a lot of that perception is biased. And a great example of that is hiring bias. We tend to hire people who look like us, who have similar experiences, maybe come from the same places. So it's not an intentional act of racism. It's sort of unintentional, wrapped in an unconscious bias. So the idea of institutional racism does exist if we look at the example of unconscious bias, and I've seen it. My example was the world of HR. And if you look at it from another point of view, or in another way, I also think that there is an influence on the way that we as Black people see ourselves.
Hello, my name is Fawzia Bonhan, and I'm so happy to be having the opportunity to speak to you all today. I feel like the best way that I know how to share my stories and to share my opinions and my voice is to do what I do best, which is reciting poetry. So I wanted to talk about imposter syndrome today. Imposter syndrome is this huge silent thing that plagues minority communities. I know that when I was younger, I always felt like I had to work twice as hard to be just as good as my white counterparts. And I feel like if you're constantly in this cycle of trying to work twice as hard, even if you do reach leadership positions, you won't even recognize when you've actually hit success. As someone that has done a lot in my 21 years, I've been featured on a lot of different news channels. I've done performances for Justin Trudeau. I've done performances for the Minister of Immigration. I've performed in national competitions. I've written a book at the age of 18. I feel like a lot of people would look at me and say, that's a successful young woman, right? But a lot of people don't understand the internal struggle that I've had growing up. And a lot of people don't see the behind the scenes or the mental turmoil that goes on in my head daily. This idea in my head that I constantly have to keep working twice as hard to be just as good as my white counterparts is something that was ingrained in me when I was a child, when I was a baby. I immigrated here when I was 5 years old. So I was constantly fed a lot of different media and texts, books that told me in subliminal or direct ways that being Black wasn't good enough, that being white was superior, better, that it's what I should aspire to be, it's what I should pray every night to become, and that until I was white, nothing I really did mattered. I wasn't beautiful enough, and I could never truly achieve success, right? That's an unachievable goal for a little girl to have. So while I sit at the feeble years of 21, with all my accomplishments and all my performances and all the people who praise me constantly for the things that I've done, there's still this silent plague, I feel like, in my mind and in the minds of a lot of young professionals, young Black professionals, that tells us that we need to do more, that we aren't doing enough, and that we haven't succeeded. I now want to perform my poem, Imposter Syndrome, because like I said, my poetry speaks better than I can. So without further ado, Imposter Syndrome. Imposter Syndrome steals all joy and reassurance. It takes because it is selfish. It is me waiting for someone to tell me that I am the bad thing and then believing them wholeheartedly when they eventually do. Imposter Syndrome gives no satisfaction. It makes success taste chalky and indigestible. I can never swallow my accomplishments for too long. My belly rejects them. Sometimes I think this is because I have two stomachs. One that craves nourishment and another that is afraid of all the inconsistencies that come with being nourished for too long. See, hunger is never late to its appointments. It is punctual. My body likes to forget that it is a system perfectly capable of replenishing itself. Imposter syndrome makes even the most strenuous tasks feel unworthy and not enough. If I am not blistered and bleeding, then I surely don't deserve praise for this. If my heart is still beating or my body healing, then something is wrong with the work I've built. Imposter syndrome tells me that if it does not kill me, how am I supposed to recognize that I was ever even alive? It looks me in the face after I have been gutted open and stripped of all I have to give. It sees me stitch myself back together and tells me that I should have left the wound open longer, should have bled out faster. It tells me that writing poems comes too easy, so it cannot replenish this body. Writing poetry is like breathing, and imposter syndrome does not reward tasks that don't leave me in ruins. To imposter syndrome, healing does not require effort, and it's only supposed to make me stronger if it's just shy of killing me. So it says I didn't work hard enough to earn it. I didn't bleed enough to get it. I didn't try enough. I need to try enough to turn words into art. Try enough until my bones turn to brittle. I need to try until the walls of my stomach cave in, until I can feel my spine withering, until I am a machine, until all I do is write and write and write, until I don't even know why I'm alive anymore. Try until I cannot try anymore, until my hands are blistered, until the rain comes, until a flood caves this body in. But writing poetry is like walking. It's just as easy as talking. So sometimes I like to tell imposter syndrome that an awful lot of people can't walk, and some might not know how. And maybe seeing me take my first steps inspires them to. Thank you.
Wow. Through the challenges despite all odds, as Maya Angelou brilliantly puts it in her poem, Still Arise. Just like moons and like suns, with a certainty of tides, just like hope springing high, still I rise. We hope these stories have inspired urgency to remove systemic racism from our institutions, from our workplaces and communities, so that everyone can have equal and equitable opportunities to reach their full potential. Friends, the time to act is now. Stay tuned for more events to come as we continue celebrating our resilience and triumphs. Please watch our website and social media pages for more information to come. We really want to thank the Government of Canada for making this project possible. And to you, we thank you for joining us. Until next time, stay safe.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like